So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for September 23rd, 2021. We'll follow the agenda as posted in the issue that was created in the TSC repo, which is 1084. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share?
I just have one. Just want to announce the accepted nomination and the collaborator promotion of ISA 252, that is Chingyu Dank.
Okay, and I guess welcome.
I'm looking for the reactions, but I don't seem to have them. But yay! So there's my reaction.
Yep, yay, thanks. If you can maybe just in the minutes make sure I got the right GitHub handle, that would be great.
I will add that. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Any other announcements people want to share?
Beth pushed a release yesterday.
Yay. That was the 16 release, right?
16.10.0. And there's also a Node 17 release candidate that I'll try and add to the minutes.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other announcements? Okay, if not, let's move on to the CPC and board meeting updates. In terms of board updates, I don't have anything other to mention that there is a board meeting tomorrow. So if there's anything that people do think I should be bringing up, let me know. I don't have anything on the list from the Node project at this point. Rich, I don't know if you have any updates from the CPC side.
Nope.
Okay.
I'll try to be more cognizant of planning to queue up a few CPC updates in the future.
Okay.
But no, there wasn't a meeting this week, right? So.
Yep.
So maybe next week.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so let's move on then to the issues which were tagged for the agenda. I think we've agreed that we're going to go to issue number 39921, which is module unflagged import sessions, and we have a guest here, Jeffrey.
Oh, and Miles
going to go into that.
If you want to promote him.
Yep. So yeah, Jeffrey, if you want to take that one away and introduce it, that'd be great.
Sure. So this is, and I guess Miles can maybe speak to this at some point too. This relates to import statements of JSON files. So a few years ago, as part of the ESM implementation, we added experimental support for an import statement of JSON, similar to how you could do like require file.json. And I think Miles was the one who built that. At the time, it wasn't like allowed by JavaScript spec, and it was unclear like exactly how the spec would permit it and how browsers would implement it and all that kind of stuff. So we created an implementation and put it behind a experimental JSON modules flag. So fast forward to oh, it's like we lost Anton. Oh well. So fast forward to today, there is was a proposal in the TSC, or not TSC, in blanking, right, TC39 to support JSON modules. I think Miles was one of the champions of that proposal, and it succeeded, and it's now at either stage 3 or stage 4, and it's supported in at least Chrome, but all the other browsers have signaled that they plan to support it as well. The final version of the proposal is a little different than what we implemented a few years ago, in that the import statement now has like a second parameter, which is an object, which is kind of like an options object. Currently, according to the spec, it only has one potential value, which is type, and that takes a string, and I think currently the only allowed string value is JSON. Now, this was added because of feedback from the browser runtimes that they were worried about an import statement of what you expect to be JSON. If it turns into JavaScript, then that could be like an attack vector for remotely executed code, because your code is expecting to receive JSON. And so they wanted some way that the browser can know that it's supposed to be JSON, and so they added this syntax.
Can I add just really
go ahead,
quickly
Miles.
some additional context there? So the whole idea here was trying to make JSON modules possible first to unlock other modules like HTML modules or CSS modules. And we actually had it, JSON modules implemented the way it was implemented in Node behind a flag land in the HTML spec. And then it was actually folks from the W3C who flagged on it for this privilege escalation attack, and it actually got reverted from the HTML spec because of that. And the biggest issue here is that browsers don't pay attention to file extensions. They only pay attention to MIME types. And so that was like the specific part of the attack where it's like, if you imported something that was .json, but the server gave you back some JS, it wouldn't really know the difference, and then it would end up executing it. And the browsers were never going to be using file extensions as a means of distinguishing between types of things in the way in which we do in Node. And so I believe import assertions are maybe what the feature ended up named as in the end. I'm a champion, I should know this, but the name changed like 4 times through the process of speccing it. But it is this new syntax that you add in addition to the import that allows you to specify the type that you're importing. So there's now like kind of this inline way of verifying the content that you're going to load that is separate from the file extension. Anyways, that was the context. Jeff, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, so anyway, because this is now like part of the spec that like this is apparently going to, as far as we can tell, this will be the only way to import JSON files through an import statement in browsers. It seems that we need to support this because users are going to expect it. Like they're going to see in MDM, and other places on the web, like documentation about import in JavaScript, and they're going to, when there's going to be a section about JSON, it's going to say that this is the syntax you're supposed to use. So because we kind of need to support this syntax because it's part of the spec and because users will expect it, that's like part one. We need to like kind of add support for this. Where there was disagreement in that thread was I'm of the opinion that we should just convert the current import statement for JSON, convert it so that you just have to have the assertion, same as browsers, you have to have the assertion. Others like Antoine are of the opinion that it should just be optional, that if you want to add the assertion, you can, but we would also support the assertion list. So there are kind of philosophical DevX, UX concerns about one approach for another. But I almost feel like we might not need to get that far. Like we might not need to debate that because there are also several like much lower level technical concerns that were also raised on that thread involving, because I'm working with the loaders group. We're trying to add support for custom loaders. And one of the things there is that like users will write loaders for like a custom resolve hook or custom load hook. And there could be 2 import statements for the same file, one with the assert and one without. And then that creates race conditions. It also creates a lot of extra complexity in that you have 2 keys for the same module in the cache. And there's all this extra complexity to manage that and maintain that. So leaving aside what you may think about the DevX concerns, I was proposing that like even just these technical concerns are probably enough for us to at least postpone the support for the assertionless syntax. Let's add the assert syntax. We can land it. We can even unflag JSON modules at that point. And then we could discuss if we want to create this optional assertion list later, we can add that. Antoine was not happy with this because that means a lot of extra work for him to redo the PR he already did, which I understand. But that's kind of where we left off.
I see, Miles, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I personally really like Jeffrey's suggestion here. Like I have my own opinions about whether or not we should support both forms of importing. Independent from that, though, I think that it's very clear, no matter what the outcome is, we should, in my opinion, support the assertion syntax, as that is something that will be supported in browsers, and it is a feature that people want today in Node to import JSON modules, and it unblocks that. This other feature that we're talking about of allowing it without the assertion would be a Node-specific feature that has a lot of other edge cases, it sounds like, to speak through, from both like a DX concern, from like a code portability concern, and from a technical concern. It's possible that those could be worked through. There are other things, for example, even if I don't agree with it, I have a bias, but there are other things that we have in Node that don't exist in universal code, that people can use linters or other technologies to like enforce certain patterns. That doesn't really help if these things start leaking into transitive dependencies. But I think that if people want to design things that can be done cross-platform, that could be something that is on them. I have mixed feelings about it. But what I do think is clear is that the overall conversation around this feature is getting muddied by like this one concern, and working through that is delaying shipping a feature to our customers that they could use. God, I'm such a product manager now. To our community that they could use like yesterday, and people want, in a form that they could use it that will definitely support no matter what. I hear what you're saying, Jeff, though, about like that creating additional work for Antoine. So perhaps one thing that we could do is see if maybe Brad or Guy or someone else has some time that they could use to kind of pick this PR up and take it to the finish line. Because Antoine, thank you for all the work that you've done on it. It's really great to have it where it is. But it isn't necessarily fair to like make you kind of redo everything because of these technical concerns.
So it
Go
sounds like Jeffrey and Miles at least agree on what the path forward is. Is there anything the TSC would need to do to prevent to unblock something so that can happen? Like, are there objections to this from Antoine or anyone else? And you guys might have to speak for you, Jeffrey or Miles. You might need to speak for.
I mean, I think. I mean, someone correct me if I'm characterizing this incorrectly, but I think Antoine added this to the TSC agenda when the discussion was more around the philosophical, like, oh, you know, why should we support something that browsers don't support? And he kind of just wanted to like overrule that objection on philosophical grounds in the TSC. That's kind of why I was saying like, that's a minefield. I don't want to take up this whole meeting diving into that. I think there are several other like technical concerns that are kind of more direct blockers that are kind of enough on their own merits to, you know, we could stop there without getting to the philosophical debate. I
think we could even go a step further. I think that like, obviously there's a point of diminishing returns in debates and conversations. I feel like the conversation around whether or not we support the assertionless less, like the form without the assertion, is still a conversation that's happening, that I don't think we're at a point where the TSC needs to override it. But I do think that we should ship what we have that works, that aligns with other platforms and what they have. And like the flip side is, and I've heard this said, I would not support a world where we don't ship anything because we don't ship the assertionless form. And I don't like, I would not be comfortable with that. Like that makes no sense to me. So like, I see this as two steps towards something. I don't think that we should make a decision on the things that still require technical discussion, but I would be comfortable with unblocking, like shipping and unflagging the assertionless form, which will be shipping in browsers, which ships, the form with the assertion, which is shipping in browsers and is shipping in Dino, and is something that like is part of the JavaScript language. That seems very reasonable to me. And I know there's an argument that could be made that the assertionless form is also a part of the language. but it is spec'd in such a way that it is the runtime's decision whether or not, like the embedder's decision whether or not to enforce that assertion. But the stricter form would be something we need to support no matter what. So I don't see a reason to block.
And we could always add the assertionless form at any point. That wouldn't be a breaking change, but the doing it the opposite way of allowing only the assertion form later would be a breaking change. So we kind of have to go, if we're going to do it in two steps, we have to do it this way.
So it sounds like there's, as far as we can tell in this meeting at least, there's agreement on the path forward, which is that if there's someone willing to do the work to get the code, to either change the existing PR or create a new PR, to do so, ship the assert syntax.
I don't know if that's correct. Like well, first off, maybe Antoine can say if he agrees with this. I'm not sure if he does, but on the thread, at least Gus just objected to shipping without both at once. Not for any real reason, just because that's what he wants. Like it's sort of like, oh, this is like the extension thing. If we ship only the one, you're never going to say yes to the other one. So I'm going to refuse. And it was really quite direct, like, this is a negotiation. This is I want this kind of thing.
Yeah,
so there might
I
not
would be willing to.
consensus.
I would be willing to override that particular objection personally, but that may have to go to a vote. But maybe that's something that we just need to kick this. If I could suggest a path forward is maybe we kick back this solution to the thread, ask if anyone objects. I will commit personally. I know I haven't been super active in this work lately. I will participate in these conversations and get more involved. So at least have more than one TSC member who's active in the discussion. So it's not just like, someone who hasn't been involved bulldozing afterwards, or just one person kind of driving it, which isn't necessarily fair. So maybe we could suggest this solution as a path forward for right now, and then ask if anyone objects to that. And then if we can't work through that objection before the next TSC meeting, then we can bring that to the TSC meeting to kind of override that if we have to.
I would say don't even bring it to the TSC meeting. I would say immediately raise an issue in the TSC repo and send an email and just let's. I don't think there's any reason to wait until the meeting.
That makes sense. Yeah, and we can just do a call on the kind of private thread and say, hey, does anyone object to overriding the objection, and then we can see if it escalates.
And for the benefit of people watching the recording or on the stream, Nikita says +1 to Miles. Antoine says he's okay with landing any JSON modules, the sooner the better. So it sounds like he's in agreement with that. This is a path forward that will work. And Nikita says, I think that the first implementation that we land should have the assertions form. So it sounds like there's agreement among the people who are talking. Go ahead, Miles. Michael, excuse me.
I was just going to say, like, if we give a little bit more time, it would perhaps give Antoine the case, the better opportunity to raise any concern he has. So I think what we just discussed is a good way, like basically kick it back to GitHub, and then, the next time open the issue where we can have the bigger discussion if we have to, and Antoine can have his full input there.
Well, Antoine,
I was just going to say that, like, realistically also, if there's technical reasons not to move forward, that's one thing, but if it's getting to more like philosophical, we could also do some user research like we have with other breaking changes. We could also go reach out to some other platforms and other people who are involved in the stack. Because if the concern that we're raising is like cross-platform concerns, well, we should confirm that the other platforms like feel the same way and agree with that decision. And I think that there's some evidence that we could collect, so it's not just purely like individual emotions or anecdotes to make that decision. I'd be happy to help with that work as well. And I say that as someone who holds like a really strong bias, and it would be way easier for me to probably just bulldoze it and say, no, we shouldn't do it, which is actually like how I feel about it, to be frank. But I don't think that it would be like really fair to handle it that way.
Okay, so I think we have the roadmap going forward, and we should move on to other issues unless somebody else wants to add something.
I just want to say one last quick point is like we've actually made a lot of progress recently in loaders. We landed a really big PR that refactored them dramatically, and we're working on adding another big PR about chaining them. So it's also like there's an argument for, hey, let's not like upset the apple cart with how module jobs are handled under the scenes while we're doing all this big work on loaders. So landing at least the assertion required form now to like get that out there, ship it for people because they don't have to wait for it. And then if we do land the assertion list, it could come a little bit later once the things are a little more settled. Loaders would kind of help us out in terms of technical things and not impeding that work. So if everyone else is okay with, if we do end up shipping both forms, at least splitting it up so we ship the other one later, my team would appreciate that. So.
And
Anybody else have anything else they want to add?
is there anything, I see the other part, we talked about, is there anything in Bradley's objection that needs discussion, or that's basically along the same lines as your objection?
If we only ship one form, like with the assertion required form, then all of Bradley's concerns are addressed, because his concerns relate to race conditions when there are two forms for the same file, or
so the stuff you're concerned about, basically.
The technical concerns. I mean, I also have philosophical concerns.
Sure. Okay.
There's more of a difference of opinions among the people about that, but I'm saying like, yeah, that we could have a whole meeting about the philosophical concerns. So
Okay, thanks.
Any more? Anybody else want to add something before we move on to the next issue? Okay, so let's move on to the next issue, which is 4115. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you, guys. See you.
That one is move one or more collaborators to emeritus. 40115. I think you opened this one, Rich.
I added it to the agenda, but I did not open it. I created an automated job to do this because doing it manually is draining. So our governance says that basically the only way someone can be moved from active to emeritus, there's two ways. One is the TSC. One is they volunteer. They just do it themselves. They just say, I'm no longer active. I'm emeritus, and they or I open a PR to move them. The other possibility is that the TSC votes for it. So these are people who have not. I mean, they may be involved in ways in the project that the code doesn't see and that I'm unaware of. But as far as I can tell, these are all folks who are not terribly involved the last couple of years. And I think it's low risk to move people to emeritus because it's very easy to just move them back. The DSC just says, sure, and then we do it. But it sure would be nice if, if we didn't have to do that. So there's 6 people here and 2 of them have indicated that it's totally okay to move them. And I'm not sure what we should do. Like, I mean, I don't want to go back to what I used to do, which is I mail everybody and I wait for a response. And when I don't get one, then I bring it to the TSC. But maybe someone else wants to email these people. Maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe we just wait another, do we wait a week and then take a vote on the people who haven't weighed in? I don't know what our procedure here should be, but I think, yeah, so that's why this is here, because it's going to need TSC action, and I want to just streamline the process. So if anybody has any comments, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just propose something.
I think I'd be comfortable with us, picking a time that says, like, if they're mentioned and they don't respond in X time, that our governance be updated to say that, they can be moved. Given, like you said, we can move people back, and that they have a chance to say, no, I'm still active. And also, I think the manual review would hopefully get us to call out anybody who's like, wait a second, we know they're active, right?
Yeah. So I realize that this PR is now 9 days old, which makes it more than a week old. And I think that unless I don't know, I think what I'd like to do is I'll email TSC and just, well, I don't know, like, I don't know if I should contact the people individually first or not, but kind of feels like if I don't know, it kind of feels like if you're not seeing this in the repo, maybe, maybe, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna do, I'll figure it out. Sorry, Michael.
Yeah, but I guess I'm like just agreeing with you in that you've probably done enough. And if we picked, I don't know what, like, week is probably too short in my mind, but like, is it 2 weeks or 4 weeks? And if they haven't chimed in on the issue and none of the TSC members say, wait a sec, we think they're still active, it's probably pretty safe.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do then is I probably will email each of them and just put a link into the PR and say that if they don't want to be moved to emeritus, they should say something. And then maybe give it till next week and then open a vote on people who don't chime in to say either yes, please move me, or no, please don't move me. That's
Yeah, and I'd even propose we change our governance so that a vote isn't necessary. I don't know what other people think on that.
that works for me. But maybe we can do that next time.
Sure, yeah, that's not necessarily tied to this. I'm just saying if we can make it a little bit easier.
I think subsequent rounds are going to be easier because this job runs every month, so it's going to find like 1 or 2 people.
Right.
But this is the first time it's running, so it found 6 people. So yeah.
I'm just like, do we need a vote, or is it like, hey, we could say, well, say 2 TSC members sign off or something like that, or it's mentioned at TSC meeting, or I don't know. But
well, I think if more than half of the TSC approves the pull request, I think that is, I think that we would be kosher. I think that we would be fine. Excuse me, to call that a vote. So if anyone wants to go in and approve that pull request, please do. I know Garish often has thoughts around onboarding and offboarding, so I want to make sure we have time for him to say anything if he has any opinions on this one way or the other.
I'm good with the proposal, though. I mean, I like the idea of getting a consensus from the outgoing collaborator, if possible. At least they get a happy feeling. I think the current proposal has it, isn't it? We are pinging the name.
Yeah, I'll be sure to send an email. And the more I'm thinking about it, the more I should definitely send an email just to provide the link to the pull request and just include a 1 sentence, whatever you decide, thank you so much for, the work you've done, blah, 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 blah. I think that kind of thing is important.
Yeah. Ideally, I used to think about the reasons why people move away. I mean, the most common reason would be they don't have a relevance with Node.js, probably, or their current job is not aligned with the contribution to the Node.js project. But I'm just wondering if there are other subset of folks where there are different reasons, like they are no more able to cooperate in the community, work in the community in a reasonable manner. Is there anything that needs to be discussed? Other concerns that can be sorted out?
Yeah,
Is it possible?
Definitely. People have a bad experience, and it's something we can do to improve. Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. I think I have everything I need to move forward on this, unless someone else has a comment or something to bring up on it. I think we can move on to the next thing.
Okay, if there's no more comments, we'll move on to the next one, which is rename default branch from master domain. We continue to make slow progress. We've flipped over the nodejs.org, which required some coordination across build and so forth. So that was good. I think the list is down to about, I'm guessing off the top of my head, it's between 5 and 10 repos. We have open issues. I've opened just like issues in all the remaining ones except for Node Core. And, I think once we work through those ones, then, we'll have the last couple, which like the build and the core one, which are most likely to have some sort of interaction with the branches. I guess nothing more than that, unless anybody else has anything to add on that one. If not, the next one is migration of core modules to Primordials. This is 3697. No, we've had it on the agenda a few times. I'm not sure. Does anybody want to jump into on that one?
Yeah, I can talk about this. We ran a couple of meetings outside of the TSC with the interested parties who had strong opinions on the matter. The first one came out with 5 different discrete proposals, and the second one we were able to converge into 3 with 2 specific. Sorry about that. 2 specific proposals being the same, though with different reasons. One is we should have the primordials because of the robustness reasons in the core. Second is we should have the primordials for the security posture of the Node.js in the core, more to do with the lifecycle aspect of the module resolutions. The loaded modules and its lifecycle should be protected from arbitrary access. So these are 2 arguments which says primordials should be there, but though with different reasons. The third one being readability and contributors' affinity towards the core is getting reduced because of non-JavaScript semantics getting either polluting the core and things like that from. So these are the 3 arguments. We did not have a convergence. So one of the possibility is to invite these 3 of those in one of the upcoming TSC where we have enough members, present their case maybe for 5 minutes. TSC listens and asks questions, and then eventually go for a vote. Or if the written description in one of the comment, I can ping that in the chat. If that is sufficient for the TSC to reflect on and either converge or go for a vote, we can do that as well. I believe running another meeting is not going to be productive. Because the people raise these points, they have strong reasons to for those points, and I don't see any sort of consensus that is emerging. And I asked this question specifically: is there any use of running further meetings in expectation of consensus? Answer was no. So at this point, we should take a stock and probably take a call. But one of the good things with the discussion is that everybody who took part was agreeing to the fact that we don't have an exclusive yes or no kind of an answer. That means eliminate the need of primordials completely or implement the primordials completely is not required. We can have incremental stages. Even if we decide to go with the primordials, we can have a hierarchical or stage-wise approach. We can also look at a subset of the module, subset of the APIs covered under primordials based on various trade-offs such as performance, readability, etc. So that's a good thing. But I think it's up to us to reflect and come up with a decision. Was it confusing or?
I guess, like, is the, like, you came down to 2 things. So if we had a vote, would the proposal be to vote on we should have them or we should not have them is kind of what was there. But, you then said that there is also like flexibility in terms of where and when. So I'm wondering if we were going to vote on, what would we vote on?
I guess we should first decide we should have primordials or should not have primordials. And then once we decided if we should have primordials, then we should decide to what level, what is the boundary? Should we have it in completeness, or should we categorize the core based on some predicate, some criteria, and address those modules for the primordials? If we decide not to have primordials, then that's a single decision. There is no further decision making required.
I do wonder if there are people who would say no would go with no primordials over primordials everywhere, and therefore, would, whether or not to have primordials, that the answer depends on if it's going to be everywhere or not. I do. First of all, thank you, Girish, for all you and everybody else who participated in the conversations. For all the material you put together. That comment that you linked to in the chat is great. And this is a lot of time and effort on a topic that a lot of us were hoping we wouldn't have to learn a lot about and weigh in on, because hoping other people would figure it out and come to agreement. But I do think, I mean, to just sort of echo what Girish was saying, I mean, it sounds like the time has come for people on the TSC to either decide that they don't have an opinion about this and we'll defer to other TSC folks, or to dig in, figure it out, and decide what the TSC consensus is, because there's not going to be consensus among the broader community. And if we can't come to consensus, then I guess obviously we have to vote.
Yeah, I guess along those lines, like, Jarish mentioned inviting each of the proponents to come and make a pitch. Does that make sense to people?
I don't know. I kind of wonder if it's all there in writing already. But I'm not gonna say no to having the various proponents come and make the pitch. But I really think that if we do that, then there's a big risk that people won't actually do the homework. Like people on the TSC won't do the home. I just feel like if it's already there in writing, let's figure it out. Especially if it's all been neatly summarized. But I'm not going to say no to a pitch, especially if Girish thinks it's a good idea. I will defer to his judgment for sure.
I mean, the good thing with the pitching in is that we make sure that we don't lose out on any arguments that are there, and specifically we can provide predefined amount of time. They can come prepared and present the key points that they want to make up to support their arguments. Yeah, I didn't think about the point that the members can come unprepared and not doing any homework if there is a ready-made presentation that's coming up.
Well, I don't think we have to vote immediately after that. That could be one extra piece of information.
Yeah.
Another useful thing might be if there are people in the TSC who either know for certain that they're not going to want to weigh in on this, or feel fairly certain, believe that they are 90% or more certain that they know what their opinion is going to be. It might be good to just get that, gather that information so that we know. So we know who the undecided people are who are likely to have opinion, who are likely to want to make an opinion, and those, and we can sort of maybe, have, move this to a separate meeting even perhaps. But I don't know, maybe that's not a good idea.
That was kind of like if people were super interested, they could have gone to the other meetings, right?
I suppose, but there's a difference between I'm going to trust the judgment of these other people who obviously care deeply enough to have strongly held opinions and go to these meetings. And I don't want, okay, they're not going to be able to come to agreement. I don't want to, I don't care what's decided. Like those are not the same thing, like you could, like, I feel like I care about what the decision is. I would have deferred to whatever decision that group of people made, though. If they could all come to agreement, I would have assumed that it was that it was a sensible decision. But the fact that they can't doesn't mean that, like, I don't care and I'm not going to, participate and educate myself so I can make an informed decision as a TSC member.
Yeah, I mean, the things I like about Jerish's proposal there is, one, we don't have to schedule some other meeting, which can take time and drags on. It's just like, okay, for the, let's pick a TSC meeting and schedule it for that. It is recorded already, so people who, we know we don't get all TSC members, but they could at least watch those if they want to, versus reading the content. And I don't know, I'm thinking it may be the simplest way to sort of get any, if the people, like you said, if things are perfectly documented in the issue and the people involved don't, basically say it's documented there, we shouldn't say, hey, you have to come and give a pitch. But if you want to and think it's a good opportunity, here's the chance. And then after that, it sounds like we need to go to a vote, right?
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the two people at this meeting besides Girish who participated in those meetings were Antoine and Nikita. And I don't think Beth or Miles or you, Michael, participated.
No, I didn't
I
participate.
certainly didn't. And so I would want to make sure that we have an opportunity and give them a chance if they have anything they want to add to this. But I think, it sounds like we need to leave this on the agenda for sure. And it sounds like we need to ask the TSC to get, get informed on this, if they care about this, if they care one way or the other, to please get informed about this. And yeah, I guess the question is, like, I feel like pointing them to that comment that Girish posted in the chat is probably a good way for people to get started. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't mind. I
think, like, if Jarish opened an issue to start the vote, pointing to that, like, to basically say we're going to need to take a vote. Here's the context that there is. Should we wait before doing that, I guess, is my question.
My only point is that we spend a lot of effort in bringing the primordials up to this point, and it's not complete. A lot of more effort that is required if we go through the path of completing the implementation. So that way, it's an important piece of work. So that means to say we could make sure that we understand all the implications of the decisions that we are going to take. So probably for me, it's worthwhile to listen to the key proponents, Jordan and Bradley and Ruben, the three arguments in favor and against. And probably that will not, converge in from the experience, but that may help us TSC members to get an idea about how do we take a call. There are many information in the comment, I agree, but it's an opportunity for us to ask questions like what is a primordial and how is going to help in various, some of the basic things can be clarified directly from those. That was only my idea.
Okay, so if I'm hearing, what I think I hear is you're suggesting we should actually schedule, you know, an opportunity for them to present before we start, like before we even open something for a vote, because that could affect what we decide the vote should be, is, which I can understand.
Yeah, that's what I was proposing. I didn't check with them whether they are available for presenting, but it's worthwhile to see.
I'd be +1 on that.
Yeah, so
I see the Wednesday meetings are more populous than other meetings. So probably then the next to next one, I will check with them if they are available to present.
So it sounds like we have an action item for Jarish, and Beth is pointing out that we need time for the private segment, and we are kind of getting
Okay.
here. And I think if we're okay to move on, I think the next item, to be or not to be in core, is kind of tied to the migration of modules, Primordials, if I'm not mistaken. At least.
I think it's pretty separate in my mind.
Okay. I wonder
But
if we can punt it to next week, even though it's very important. But I don't know that we have the right folks here necessarily. Like Ronag isn't here. Robert. Najee.
Yeah, I agree that we can defer that to next time, and because I don't think we have anybody who's like the key people who've been part of that. I'm not sure are here. So okay, so on the migration core Primordials, Jarish, you're gonna like talk to the 3 people, and we'll potentially schedule for October 7th is the closure of that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And so with that, anything else we should talk before we go off to the private section? Okay, if not, I'm going to stop the stream.